She said I was just a grease monkey who'd never prove she stole my design. My wife, my savings, my 4 years of engineering work, she thought she could take it all and leave me with nothing but dirty fingernails and an empty garage. But she had no idea what this grease monkey was capable of when pushed too far. The betrayal happened on a Tuesday morning that started like any other in Bakersfield, California. I was underneath a 2019 Ford F-150, my coveralls already stained with transmission fluid, when my wife Brenda walked into Sullivan's Auto Repair wearing that sharp business suit she'd been favoring lately. For 12 years, I'd been Tommy Sullivan, owner of the most trusted garage on Chester Avenue. Nothing fancy, just honest work, fair prices, and the kind of reputation that kept customers coming back generation after generation. Brenda stood there with her briefcase, looking at me like I was something she'd stepped in. "Tommy," she said, her voice colder than the January wind whipping through the bay doors. "We need to talk." I rolled out from under the truck, wiping my hands on an old shop rag. Behind her, I could see my workbench where I'd been putting the finishing touches on my masterpiece, a revolutionary turbo manifold design that could boost horsepower by 25% while actually improving fuel efficiency. 4 years of late nights, countless prototypes, and every spare dollar I could scrape together had gone into perfecting that design. "What's eating at you, hun?" I asked, though something in her posture already had my stomach knotting up. She set a manila folder on my workbench, right next to my latest prototype. "I'm filing for divorce, Tommy, and I want the garage." The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest. 12 years of marriage, just like that. But it was what came next that really gutted me. "I've already talked to a lawyer," she continued, her tone as businesslike as if she were discussing quarterly sales figures. "You can keep your tools and maybe rent a bay somewhere, but this property, our savings, the house, that's all going to be part of the settlement." I stared at her, my throat going dry. "Brenda, this garage has been in my family for 30 years, I know." She waved dismissively. "But let's be realistic here, Tommy. You're good with your hands, sure, but you're not business-minded. You're not sophisticated." That word hung in the air like motor oil in water. But it wasn't until 3 days later that I discovered the real depth of her betrayal. I was going through our joint bank statements, trying to figure out how I'd afford a lawyer on a mechanic's salary, when I noticed the withdrawals. $85,000. Our entire life savings drained over the past 6 months in chunks of 5 and 10,000 at a time. Money I'd saved from 15-hour days, weekend jobs, and skipping vacations so we could have something for retirement. My hands shook as I stared at the statements. Then I remembered something that made my blood run cold. Last month, I'd caught Brenda in my workshop late one evening, claiming she was just looking around. She'd seemed flustered, quickly stepping away from my workbench where I kept my design notebooks and prototype blueprints. I rushed to my filing cabinet and yanked open the drawer where I kept my most sensitive work. The folder was there, but something felt wrong. I spread the blueprints across my workbench under the fluorescent lights, and that's when I saw it. Tiny creases in the corners, slightly different alignment marks. Someone had photographed these documents. My turbo manifold design, 4 years of my life. Every measurement, every stress calculation, every innovation I'd poured my soul into. She'd stolen it all. The next morning, I drove to the county clerk's office with a sick feeling in my gut. 20 minutes later, I was staring at a patent application filed just 2 weeks ago by something called Steel Flow Automotive Solutions. The applicant's signatures belonged to Brenda Sullivan and Marcus Steele. Marcus Steele. I'd heard that name before. Some hotshot investor from Los Angeles who'd been sniffing around the local dealerships talking about revolutionizing the aftermarket performance industry. Brenda had mentioned meeting him at a trade conference last year. When I confronted her that evening in our kitchen, she didn't even have the decency to look ashamed. "You went behind my back," I said, sliding the patent application across our dining table. "You stole my work." Brenda glanced at the papers and shrugged, sipping her wine like we were discussing the weather. "I utilized an opportunity, Tommy. That design was just sitting in your garage collecting dust. Marcus has the connections and capital to actually bring it to market. That design is mine." 4 years of work, Brenda. 4 years of what? She set down her wine glass harder than necessary. "Of you playing around in that garage like it's some kind of hobby? Tommy, you're 46 years old. You fix cars for farmers and contractors. You were never going to do anything meaningful with that design." The contempt in her voice was like a physical blow. This woman I'd loved, who I'd supported through college, who'd shared my bed for 12 years, she saw me as nothing. "You'll never prove it was your idea anyway," she continued, her smile turning cruel. "A grease monkey like you against Marcus's legal team? Please." That night, alone in my garage with only the hum of the fluorescent lights for company, I stared at the prototype turbo manifold sitting on my workbench. Brenda's words echoed in my head. "You'll never prove it was your idea anyway." She was probably right about one thing. Going up against Marcus Steele's legal team would bankrupt me before I ever saw the inside of a courtroom. But there was something she didn't know, something I'd never told anyone. A little insurance policy I'd built into every prototype I'd ever created. You see, when you've been burned before by people stealing your ideas, and trust me, it happens more than you'd think in this business, you learn to protect yourself. Hidden in the third cooling channel of my turbo manifold design was a deliberate flaw. The metal alloy mixture I'd specified would develop hairline stress fractures after exactly 15,000 miles of moderate use. Not enough to cause immediate catastrophic failure, but enough to create performance drops, oil leaks, and eventually complete breakdown. Only I knew the exact metallurgical composition that would prevent this failure. Only I had the real design. The next morning, I called Jake Rodriguez, my parts supplier for the past 15 years. Jake ran Rodriguez Auto Supply from a warehouse on the east side of town, and he'd been in the business longer than I'd been alive. "Jake, it's Tommy. I need a favor, and it's important." "What's going on, hermano? You sound like someone ran over your dog." I told him everything. The divorce, the stolen design, the patent filing, Brenda's partnership with Marcus Steele. Jake listened without interrupting, occasionally muttering Spanish curses under his breath. "That's low, even for a divorce," he said finally. "What do you need from me?" "Two things. First, I need you to document every conversation we've had about my turbo design over the past 4 years. Times, dates, what we discussed, everything. Done. What's the second thing? I need you to keep your ears open. When Steel Flow Automotive starts sourcing parts for production, I want to know about it. And when their products start hitting the market," I paused, thinking about those stress fractures. "When they start hitting the market, I want to know about every warranty claim, every failure, every customer complaint." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Tommy, you sound like a man with a plan." "I am, but it's going to take time. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year. Can you be patient?" "For you? After what that woman did? I got all the time in the world." My next call was to Danny O'Brien, a young mechanic who'd worked for me 3 summers running while he was in community college. Danny was different from most kids his age. He understood engines the way some people understood music. He'd also started a YouTube channel called Danny's Garage that had grown to over 500,000 subscribers. Kids these days documented everything online.
"Mr. Sullivan?"
"How's it going?" "I was just thinking about you yesterday when I was working on this gnarly transmission rebuild." "Danny, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Do you remember that turbo manifold project I was working on when you were here last summer? Are you kidding? That thing was incredible. The way you calculated those flow dynamics, I actually mentioned it in one of my videos about innovative design concepts." "Why?" My heart started pounding. "You mentioned it in a video?" "When? Last August, I think." "I was talking about how real innovation comes from guys like you who understand engines from the ground up, not from some corporate boardroom. I even showed some sketches you'd let me make of the intake geometry." Danny's video was exactly the evidence I needed. Uploaded to YouTube on August 15th, complete with timestamps and sketches of my intake geometry, 3 months before Brenda and Marcus filed their patent application. I saved multiple copies and screenshots, my hands shaking with the first real hope I'd felt in weeks. But I needed more than just evidence. I needed to understand exactly what I was up against. That weekend, I drove to Los Angeles to see Marcus Steele's operation firsthand. Steel Flow Automotive had rented a massive warehouse in the industrial district near LAX. Through the chain-link fence, I could see workers unloading machinery, setting up production lines. They were moving fast, clearly planning to bring my stolen design to market within months. I parked across the street and watched for 3 hours, taking photos and notes. That's when I saw them together, Brenda and Marcus, walking out of the building like they owned the world. She was dressed in expensive clothes I'd never seen before, laughing at something he'd said. The way she touched his arm, the way she looked at him, it was obvious this wasn't just business. My wife of 12 years was having an affair with the man who'd stolen my life's work. The next few weeks fell into a routine. I worked on customers' cars during the day, maintaining the facade of normalcy while my world crumbled around me. But every evening I made phone calls. First was Lisa Carter, an automotive engineer who'd occasionally consulted on my more complex projects. Lisa had a PhD from Caltech and worked for one of the major manufacturers, but she respected hands-on expertise more than most people with her credentials. "Tommy, I heard about the divorce." "I'm sorry, Thanks, Lisa. But that's not why I'm calling. I need your professional opinion on something. I explained the situation, sending her photos of my original blueprints and the patent filing. 3 days later, she called back with controlled fury in her voice. This is theft, plain and simple. Not only did they steal your design, but they filed it incorrectly. The stress calculations in their patent application are wrong. They're using inferior materials that will cause premature failure. How can you be sure? Because I remember when you showed me your prototype last year, you were concerned about metal fatigue in the cooling channels. You spent months testing different alloys. These people just copied your drawings without understanding the engineering behind them. Lisa agreed to document everything. Our previous consultations, her technical analysis of both designs, and her professional assessment of the timeline. More importantly, she introduced me to Pete Williams, who owned a small racing team that had used several of my custom modifications. Pete was a former Marine who'd turned his love of fast cars into a business building race engines for local dirt tracks and drag strips. When I told him what had happened, his face went red. That's bullshit, Tommy. Everybody in this community knows you've been working on that turbo design for years. Hell, you installed a prototype on my driver's car last season. You have records of that? Better than records. I got photos, video, and dyno results. That prototype gave us a 15 horsepower gain over our old setup. We've been bragging about your work to anyone who'd listen. By October, I had assembled a network of evidence and allies that Brenda and Marcus never could have imagined. Jake was tracking their supply chain and production timeline. Danny had documented my innovation in videos watched by 500,000 people. Lisa provided technical credibility and engineering analysis. Pete offered real-world performance data and industry connections. But the best part was still to come. Because while they were rushing to get my stolen design to market, I was perfecting the real version, the one without the fatal flaw. January brought 2 major developments. First, SteelFlow Automotive officially launched the SteelFlow Turbo Max Pro with a massive marketing campaign. Their ads appeared in every automotive magazine, promising revolutionary performance gains and cutting-edge engineering. The retail price was $2,400 per unit, nearly double what I would have charged for the same design. Second, my divorce papers arrived. Brenda was demanding the garage property, half of everything I owned, and 3 years of alimony. Her lawyer's letter included a subtle threat about frivolous patent disputes and how expensive they could become for someone in my financial position. I filed the papers in my desk drawer and got back to work. By March, Jake started hearing whispers from his distribution network. SteelFlow had moved over 3,000 units in their first quarter, mostly to performance shops and racing teams across the Southwest. The automotive press was calling it the breakthrough of the year. Marcus Steele appeared in interviews talking about his innovative engineering team and their proprietary development process. Meanwhile, I was putting the finishing touches on my perfected design. Working late into the night, I'd solved the metallurgy problem that would plague SteelFlow's version. My new alloy mixture would eliminate the stress fractures entirely while actually improving heat dissipation by another 8%. The first failure reports started trickling in around the 14,000-mile mark, just as I'd predicted. A racing team in Phoenix reported oil leaks. A performance shop in Vegas noticed power drops in their customer's truck. But these were isolated incidents, easily dismissed as installation errors or user negligence. Then Danny called with news that made my heart race. Mr. Sullivan, you're not going to believe this. Remember that racing team Pete introduced you to last year? The one running your prototype manifold? They just won the Southwest Regional Championship. That's great, Danny, but no, you don't understand. Their main competitor was running the new SteelFlow unit. Same exact truck, same engine specs, everything identical except the turbo manifold. Your design smoked them by 4 car lengths. Danny had filmed the entire race weekend and posted it to his YouTube channel. The video already had 200,000 views and counting. In the comments section, engine builders and racing enthusiasts were debating the performance differences they'd witnessed. More importantly, Danny had interviewed both teams about their setups. Pete's driver praised the custom Sullivan manifold that had been running flawlessly for over 20,000 miles. The competing team complained about inconsistent performance from their expensive SteelFlow unit. But the real breakthrough came in April when Jake called with urgency in his voice. Tommy, you need to get down here right now. I just got off the phone with 3 different shops, and they're all reporting the same thing. I drove to Jake's warehouse, where he'd spread warranty claim forms across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. 17 confirmed failures in the past 2 weeks, he said. All SteelFlow Turbo Max units, all between 14,000 and 16,000 miles. Hairline cracks in the cooling channels, exactly like you predicted. I studied the paperwork, my pulse quickening. Auto shops from California to Texas were documenting identical failure patterns. Oil leaks, power loss, metal fatigue in the exact locations where I'd engineered the weakness. Jake, I need you to do something for me. Contact every one of these shops and tell them Tommy Sullivan has a solution. Tell them I've been working on an improved version of this design for 4 years, and I can prove it. That evening, I called Lisa Carter with the failure data. The stress fractures are appearing exactly where my analysis predicted, she confirmed after reviewing the warranty reports. Tommy, you need to document everything. This isn't just patent theft anymore, it's about public safety. May was when everything changed. I called Danny and told him it was time to go nuclear. I want you to make a video, I said. But this one's different. This one's going to end steel flow. Danny drove down from Sacramento that weekend with his camera equipment. We spent 2 days in my garage documenting everything. My original hand-drawn blueprints from 2019, the progression of prototypes, the metallurgy tests showing the stress fracture problem. Most importantly, we filmed my perfected version, the Sullivan Turbo Max that solved every flaw in the stolen design. This is incredible, Mr. Sullivan, Danny said, filming me explaining the engineering differences. You've basically created a time-stamped documentary of intellectual property theft. The video went live on Tuesday morning. Danny titled it Stolen Design Exposed, the real story behind Steel Flow's turbo manifold. Within 6 hours, it had 50,000 views. By evening, it was approaching 200,000. The automotive community exploded. Comments poured in from engine builders, racing teams, and performance shops. People who'd worked with me over the years came forward with their own stories and photos. The evidence was overwhelming, but the real catalyst came Wednesday morning when Jake called with barely controlled excitement. Tommy, turn on Channel 7 News. Right now. I switched on the television to see a reporter standing outside a Bakersfield performance shop. The headline read, Local Auto Parts Causing Widespread Failures. This is the third shop this week reporting identical problems with Steel Flow's Turbo Max manifolds, the reporter was saying. Customers are demanding refunds as engine damage mounts into the thousands of dollars. The shop owner, Bill Martinez, held up a cracked manifold for the camera. This is a $2,400 part that's supposed to last 100,000 miles. Instead, it's failing at 15,000 and taking expensive engine components with it. My phone started ringing nonstop. Performance shops from across California wanted to know about my improved design that Danny had showcased in his video. Racing teams asked if I could build custom units. Even automotive journalists called for interviews. That afternoon, I got the call I'd been waiting for. Mr. Sullivan, this is Patricia Wells from the Patent and Trademark Office. We've received multiple complaints regarding patent application 11,247,891 filed by Steel Flow Automotive. We understand you may have relevant prior art documentation. I spent 2 hours on the phone with Patent Office investigators, walking them through my evidence. Danny's August video, Lisa Carter's technical analysis, Pete's racing documentation, Jake's timeline of my design evolution, everything I'd spent months collecting. Mr. Sullivan, Patricia said finally, based on this preliminary review, we're opening a formal investigation into potential patent fraud. Steel Flow's application will be suspended pending our findings. Friday brought the newspaper article that changed everything. The Bakersfield Californian ran a front-page story. Local mechanics design stolen by Los Angeles company. The reporter had interviewed me, Danny, Lisa, and several affected customers. Most damaging was a photo comparison showing my original 2019 sketches next to Steel Flow's patent filing. But the coup de grace came when the reporter contacted Brenda for comment about her role in the theft. According to the article, she'd hung up immediately. Marcus Steele's response was equally telling, no comment on pending litigation. By Sunday, Danny's expose video had over 2 million views. The automotive press picked up the story. Social media was flooded with posts from mechanics and racing teams supporting me. #sign Justice for Sullivan started trending on Twitter. Monday morning, my lawyer called. The same lawyer I'd scraped together money to hire for the divorce. Tommy, you're not going to believe this. Brenda's attorney just called. They want to discuss an immediate settlement. No demands, no conditions. They just want to make this go away. I smiled, wiping grease off my hands with an old shop rag. Tell them we'll consider their offer, but first they need to hear mine. 2 weeks later, everything unraveled faster than I could have imagined. Steel Flow's recall announcement made national automotive news. Over 3,000 units had to be pulled from the market after 17 documented engine failures and mounting customer lawsuits. The recall alone cost them nearly $7 million, but that was just the beginning. Marcus Steele's investors pulled out within days. According to industry reports, they'd discovered his company had no actual engineering team and no legitimate research and development. The entire operation was built on stolen intellectual property. His warehouse in Los Angeles shut down, leaving dozens of employees without jobs. But watching Brenda's world collapse was the real satisfaction. The divorce settlement she'd once demanded became a joke. Her lawyer, faced with overwhelming evidence of theft and fraud, advised immediate capitulation. She got nothing. No garage, no alimony, no shared assets. In fact, she owed me restitution for the stolen savings she'd used to fund her failed venture with Marcus. The adultery evidence I'd documented made California's no-fault divorce laws irrelevant. Her theft of marital assets for personal enrichment was a separate legal matter entirely. Danny's follow-up video, titled "Justice Served: How a Grease Monkey Beat Corporate Thieves," went viral with over 5 million views. The automotive community had rallied behind me completely. Orders for my perfected Sullivan Turbo Max began pouring in from across the country. Lisa Carter helped me file my own patent application, properly documented and technically sound. The patent office fast-tracked it after their investigation confirmed SteelFlow's fraud. Within 6 months, I held legitimate patents on 3 variations of my turbo manifold design. Jake became my official distributor, handling orders from performance shops nationwide. Pete's racing team became my unofficial testing ground, setting track records with my equipment. Even Danny left his old job to work full-time producing promotional content for Sullivan Performance Parts. The business grew beyond anything I'd imagined. Within a year, I'd moved from my small garage to a proper manufacturing facility on the outskirts of Bakersfield. 23 employees, including several former SteelFlow workers who'd been left unemployed by Marcus's collapse. As for Brenda, she disappeared from Bakersfield entirely. Last I heard, she was working at a used car lot in Fresno, her reputation in the automotive sales industry permanently destroyed. Marcus Steele faced federal fraud charges and multiple civil lawsuits from his former investors. The final vindication came when Automotive Engineering magazine featured my story as their cover article. From Garage to Glory, How One Mechanic's Innovation Exposed Industry Fraud. They called my turbo manifold design a masterpiece of practical engineering and my business model proof that innovation thrives in America's workshops. I framed that magazine cover and hung it in my office, right next to Danny's original YouTube video screenshot and a photo of my first prototype. Not because I needed validation anymore, but because I wanted to remember something important. Brenda had called me just a grease monkey who could never prove my worth. She was wrong about everything except one detail. I am a grease monkey. I'm proud to be a grease monkey. And this grease monkey just revolutionized an entire industry. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being exactly who you are, but doing it better than anyone thought possible. 2 years later, I'm sitting in my new office overlooking the Sullivan Performance Parts manufacturing floor. Through the window, I can see 43 employees building the most advanced turbo manifolds in the industry. The irony isn't lost on me that I now employ more people than Marcus Steele ever did. The business has exceeded every projection. We're shipping units to race teams, performance shops, and OEM manufacturers across North America. Ford just signed a contract for us to supply manifolds for their new high-performance truck line. The same design Brenda called worthless is now generating $7 million in annual revenue. Danny's YouTube channel has grown to 8 million subscribers. He produces a weekly show called Sullivan Sundays, where we showcase new installations and customer builds. Last month's episode featuring a 1,200 horsepower drag car running our equipment hit 4 million views. The comments section is filled with aspiring mechanics asking for advice and sharing their own projects. Jake retired last year and sold his distribution business to me. He still comes by every Tuesday to argue about carburetor tuning and complain that modern engines are too complicated. Lisa Carter joined our engineering team full-time, bringing 3 patents of her own and a reputation that opened doors I never knew existed. Pete Williams' racing team has won 17 regional championships using our equipment. More importantly, his drivers have never experienced a single manifold failure. That perfect reliability record has become our strongest marketing tool. The legal aftermath took 18 months to fully resolve. Marcus Steele pleaded guilty to federal fraud charges and served 8 months in minimum security prison. His restitution payments help fund our employee profit-sharing program. Brenda avoided criminal charges but faced civil lawsuits from SteelFlow's former investors. She declared bankruptcy and moved to Nevada where her sister lives. I don't take pleasure in her downfall anymore. The anger that drove me for months has been replaced by something better: pride in what we've built here. Every morning I walk through the shop floor and see skilled craftsmen doing honest work. We're not just making car parts, we're proving that American manufacturing and innovation are alive and well. The divorce finalized quietly. I kept the original garage, now converted into our research and development lab. Brenda's belongings were shipped to her new address without ceremony. The house feels different now, not empty but peaceful. I've started dating Sarah, a local teacher who appreciates that I come home with grease under my fingernails. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Brenda had simply asked to be a partner instead of a thief. If she'd respected my work instead of stolen it. But then I look at what we've accomplished, and I realize her betrayal was the catalyst for something far greater than I could have achieved alone. She thought being called a grease monkey was an insult. She never understood it was my greatest strength. In trying to destroy me, she forced me to discover exactly how much this grease monkey was capable of building. Some days that's revenge enough. Other days it feels like justice. Most days it just feels like coming home.